Chapter 6. The Castle of Will and Daring. By dawn of the next day, the unlikely trio came to the final castle. It was taller than the others, and its walls looked thicker. Confident that he'd soon pass through this castle as well, the knight started across the drawbridge with the animals. When they were halfway across, the door to the castle flew open and out lumbered a huge, menacing, fire-breathing dragon, glittering with shiny green scales. Shocked, the knight stopped dead in his tracks. He had seen dragons in his time, but this one beat them all. It was enormous, and flames roared not only out of its mouth, as was the case with any run-of-the-mill dragon, but also out of its eyes and ears. To make matters worse, the flames were blue, meaning the dragon had a high butane content. The knight reached for his sword, but his hand fell away empty. He began to tremble. In a croaky, unrecognizable voice, the knight called out to Merlin for help. But much to the knight's dismay, the magician did not appear. "Why doesn't he come?" the knight asked anxiously as he dodged a jet of blue flame from the monster. "I don't know," replied Squirrel. "He's usually so reliable." Rebecca, who was sitting on the knight's shoulder, cocked her head and listened attentively. "From what I can pick up, Merlin is in Paris attending a magician's conference." "He can't let me down now," the knight thought to himself. He had promised there wouldn't be any dragons on the path of truth. "He meant ordinary dragons," roared the monster in a booming voice that shook the trees and nearly knocked Rebecca off the knight's shoulders. The situation looked grave. A dragon who could read minds was absolutely the worst kind. But somehow the knight forced himself to stop trembling. In the strongest, loudest voice he could command, he shouted, "Get out of my way, you oversized Bunsen burner!" The beast snorted, sending fire in all directions. Pretty tough talk from a scaredy cat. The knight, not knowing what to do next, stalled for time. "What are you doing in the Castle of Will and Daring?" he asked. "Can you think of a better place for me to live? I'm the dragon of Fear and Doubt." The knight had to admit this dragon was well named. Fear and doubt was precisely what he felt. The dragon bellowed again. "I'm here to knock off all you smart alecks who think you can lick anybody just because you've been through the Castle of Knowledge." Rebecca whispered in the knight's ear. "Merlin once said that self-knowledge can kill the dragon of fear and doubt." "Do you believe that?" the knight whispered back. "Yes," replied Rebecca firmly. "Then you take on the jolly green flame-thrower." The knight turned and quickly retreated across the drawbridge. "Ho, ho, ho, ho!" laughed the dragon, his last ho nearly igniting the seat of the knight's pants. "Are you quitting after you've come this far?" Squirrel asked as the knight brushed sparks from his backside. "I don't know," the knight replied. "I've become used to some little luxuries, like living." Sam chimed in. "How can you live with yourself if you don't have the will and daring to test your self-knowledge?" "Do you believe, too, that self-knowledge can kill the dragon of fear and doubt?" asked the knight. "Certainly, self-knowledge is truth, and you know what they say. Truth is mightier than the sword." "I know they say it, but has anyone actually proved it and lived?" quibbled the knight. No sooner had he uttered these words than the knight remembered he didn't need to prove anything. He was born good, kind, and loving. Therefore, he did not have to feel fear and doubt. The dragon was only an illusion. The knight looked across the drawbridge to where the monster was pawing the ground and setting fire to some nearby bushes, apparently keeping in practice. With the thought in mind that the dragon existed only if he believed it did, the knight took a big breath and slowly marched over the drawbridge. The dragon, of course, came out to meet the knight again, snorting and spitting fire. This time, however, the knight continued marching forward. Yet the knight's courage soon began to melt, as did his beard, from the heat of the dragon's flame. With a cry of both fear and anguish, the knight turned and ran. The dragon let out a mighty laugh and shot a stream of searing flame at the retreating knight. With a howl of pain, the knight flew across the drawbridge with Squirrel and Rebecca close behind him. Spotting a small brook, he quickly plunged his scorched steed into the cool water, quenching the flames with a hiss. Squirrel and Rebecca stood on the bank, trying to comfort him. "You were very brave," said Squirrel. "Not too bad for a first try," added Rebecca. Astonished, the knight looked up from where he sat. What do you mean, first try? Squirrel said matter-of-factly, You'll do better when you come back the second time. The knight retorted angrily, You go back a second time. Remember, the dragon is only an illusion, said Rebecca. And the fire coming from its mouth, was that an illusion? Right, answered Rebecca. The fire is an illusion too. Then why am I sitting in this brook with a burn behind? Demanded the knight. Because you made the fire real by believing the dragon is real, explained Rebecca. If you believe the dragon of fear and doubt is real, you give it the power to burn your behind or anything else too, said Squirrel. You're right, added Sam. You have to go back and face the dragon once and for all. The knight felt cornered. It was 3 against 1, or rather it was 2.5 against a half. For the Sam half of the knight agreed with the Squirrel and Rebecca, while the other half of him wanted to stay on the brook. As the knight grappled with his flagging courage, he heard Sam say, God gave man courage. Courage gives God to men. I'm tired of figuring out what things mean. I'd much rather just sit here in the brook and relax. Look, Sam encouraged, if you face the dragon, there's a chance that it'll destroy you. But if you don't face the dragon, it surely will destroy you. Decisions are simple when there's really no alternative, said the knight. Reluctantly, he struggled to his feet, took a deep breath, and once again started across the drawbridge. The dragon looked up in disbelief. This certainly was a stubborn fellow. Back again? He snorted. Well, this time I'm going to really burn you. But it was a different knight who was marching toward the dragon now. A knight who chanted over and over, Fear and doubt are illusions. The dragon threw gigantic crackling flames at the knight, time and time again, but try as hard as the monster might, he could not set fire to him. As the knight continued to approach, the dragon became smaller and smaller, until it was finally no bigger than a frog. Its flame extinguished, the dragon began to spit small seeds at the knight. But these, the seeds of doubt, didn't stop the knight either. The dragon became still smaller as the knight continued to advance determinedly. I've won! Shouted the knight victoriously. The dragon could barely speak. Perhaps this time, but I'll be back again and again to stand in your way. And with that, it vanished in a puff of blue smoke. Come back whenever you want, the knight called after it. Each time you do, I'll be stronger and you'll be weaker. Rebecca flew up and landed on the knight's shoulder. You see, I was right. Self-knowledge can kill the dragon of fear and doubt. If you truly believe that, why don't you walk up to the dragon with me? Asked the knight, no longer feeling inferior to his feathered friend. Rebecca fluffed her feathers. I wouldn't want to interfere. It's your trip. Amused, the knight started to reach for the castle door, but the castle of Will and Daring was gone. Sam explained, You don't have to learn Will and Daring because you've just shown you have them. The knight threw back his head, laughing in pure joy. He could see the top of the mountain. The path appeared much steeper than it had been so far, but that didn't matter. He knew that nothing could stop him now.